What is up, YouTube? Welcome into the weekly DFS recap. This is recapping yesterday's games, week 3 on my Draftkings cash lineup, which actually ended up cashing, came in 10th place, which was the last place that actually cashed. So got a little bit lucky there, but overall it was a pretty good week and everything for the cash lineup. So we're just going to get right into the recap here. Right here, starting at the quarterback position, Patrick Mahomes. I was actually the only person in this double up that played Pat Mahomes, which is kind of interesting. Although I understand, given the fact that he was $7,600 and he's not really a huge, a really good play, beyond the fact that he can, put up 30 points basically every single week. Like, he is a good cash play, but he's just so expensive that it's just hard for a lot of people to get him into lineups and then fit a lineup around him with other really good running backs and wide receivers and everything. You could have gotten Lamar Jackson for $600 cheaper, or Dak Prescott for $1,100 cheaper, or went some complete other different direction and get a quarterback that was sub 6,000 as well too. There were a couple there that did well, or if you got lucky and played like Kyle Allen or Daniel Jones, that would have worked out really well for you there. But yeah, so I played Patrick Mahomes. It was basically just the fact that I had money left over when I was building my lineup, and I had originally had Dak Prescott in, and whenever I was building out the rest of my lineup, as you'll see, we'll get to like Nelson Aguilar, who was like $3,600, I believe. It just ended up working out that I could get up to Pat Mahomes, and I was like, well, in a fantastic matchup. In a game that should be really fun to watch, and Pat Mahomes is like one of the most consistent quarterbacks ever. It was too easy not to just plug and play and not really think about that one, and just sit there and watch Pat Mahomes ball out and have fun. And the first time I've ever been able to play Pat Mahomes in a cash game lineup, so this is gonna make me try and see how much more I could fit him into my lineups. It might not be a whole lot, but when I can, I want to be able to, because he is so talented, so good. The weapons around him, he just has such a diverse weaponry of wide receivers, and Travis Kelce as well too. He's got the running backs that he can throw to. One of his touchdowns was to Shady McCoy. So just super easy to play Patrick Mahomes if you can work him in with his weekly price every week of being a $7,500 plus quarterback. Moving on, running back here, I'm gonna go down to my RB1, my most expensive running back, Dalvin Cook. He was played in 39.1% of the lineups in this double up, and he was still sub $8,000. So basically, that was like the first thing I did whenever I made my lineup, was just, all right, where's Dalvin Cook? Plug him in, done for the day. And that's all I needed right there, was just being able to play Dalvin Cook. 27.3 points, the third straight phenomenal week for him. He added 110 rushing yards, got you the 100-point bonus, 4 receptions for 33 yards, and also added a touchdown on the ground too. Had another touchdown vultured by Adam Thielen on the goal line, so that wasn't fun. So that could have been an even better day. Also, to add on top of that, the fact that Alexander Mattison, his backup running back, also had a phenomenal day as well too. Had I believe double-digit carries, also had a touchdown. So if you would have thought, even with Madison's production on top of Dalvin Cook doing some really bad math there, he could have had like a 40-point week and had been really insane for you. But 27.3, exactly what we're looking for. Almost a 4-time ROI on his price, and it's just way too easy to play Dalvin Cook right now with the type of volume that he's getting both on the ground and through the receiving game. That's all Minnesota wants to do, is just play. Just go out there and be in the lead and run the ball even when they're not in the lead. That's just what they want to do, is get the ball to Dalvin Cook. So it's just way too easy. I have him in my lineup for week 4 already, whenever I look ahead to that. So he is over $8,000 though, which is, his pricing is finally catching up to where his production has been for the last 3 weeks. But that one was just too easy. Week 3, Dalvin Cook, done. The next one here, Chris Carson, also owned in 39.1% of lineups in this. He had 5.1 points, 53 yards on the ground, -2 receiving yards on 1 catch, and then also fumbled the ball. So wasn't really the game that I expected at all from Seattle, and definitely not the game I expected from Chris Carson. As being a sub $6,000 running back, it was I thought it was going to be like how it was for him in week 1. Back in week 1, he was also sub $6,000 against Cincinnati. And I kind of thought it was going to be the same type of game where they were going to be, ahead for the majority of it. Chris Carson was going to get the carries. He had 15 carries again against the Saints, as he did with the Bengals. It just, the touchdown wasn't there, and then he didn't get the receiving volume on top of that either, which is kind of strange to me too. So really, this one was just kind of a big miss just across the board. It wasn't really what I was expecting from the Seattle Seahawks. It was not what I was expecting from the New Orleans Saints with the type of production that they had with Teddy Bridgewater, and then also the fact that they had, I believe, 2 defensive touchdowns as well too, or maybe just 1. But it was just not the game that I really expected from Chris Carson. So luckily, the rest of my team managed to pick up and cover for him. But I was feeling really good going into that 4:30 game. I was in, like, I believe 6th or 7th place after the 1 o'clock games, and I still had Carson to play, I still had Fitz to play, I still had Eckler to play, and the Seahawks defense. And so I was feeling really good about that, and I ended up dropping down to 10th. A lot of people also had Keenan Allen too, and so it's just it worked out in my favor, but not. I don't want to be that close. And I think Chris Carson was part of that reason, and a big miss on my part for that one. So yikes. Moving on down, I'm going to hit the flex position because, again, another running back. Austin Eckler, basically another guy that I just plug and played right there. 43.5% played in this double up. He finished with 45 receiving yards on 7 receptions and also added 36 rushing yards. Basically, my thinking on this one was they were going to play against Houston. I knew it was going to be a competitive game, a good matchup for both sides, and both sides were going to have to throw the ball. Given the fact that the Chargers lost Hunter Henry, they don't really have a solid running back core with Eckler and Justin Jackson to give them the rushing output that Melvin Gordon would be able to. And Eckler has been the type of guy to, do a lot of route running out of the slot position, as well as adding the rushing floor as well. So it was really just a combo of both, and I thought that he was going to be needed in the receiving game more than he would in the rushing game, and it ended up working in that favor. Just 7 receptions, so it worked out, but 45 yards on top of that. Didn't find the end zone either, so it was an okay day for him. 15.1 points, so that was a little over 2-time ROI for him, and it ended up being just all right in my flex spot. I do wish I could have went elsewhere with that. I'm starting to look at the possibility of other receivers there. Mike Evans was in that range. Amari Cooper was in that range of guys that I could have had instead of Eckler and had a much better output. So just another thing that I want to work on with my process myself, trying to figure out the flex position and not just look straight away at the running backs, even though Eckler was just fine here. Moving on to the wide receivers. The first one, the easy one, the chalk on the entire week that didn't really look like it was going to be chalk about 3/4 of the way through the game. Nelson Agholor ended up finishing with 8 receptions for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also fumbled the ball once as well too, but it could have been a lot better day, not only with him not fumbling, but he had a couple drops in there as well too, and it was a really weird game. The whole entire time I was watching, and the Eagles just couldn't get anything done, even though Wentz was kind of force-feeding Agholor. He wasn't really looking at anybody else. He had a couple of throws to Matt Collins. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside had the long bomb at the end of the game that was kind of the Hail Mary that he ended up dropping. So just a really weird game, but Wentz did have tunnel vision for Agholor, which is what I was counting on from a guy who was only, I believe it was like $3,600 or $3,700 on here. So yeah, he was 36. So it was really just, I didn't need a whole lot. I definitely wasn't expecting 24, especially with the 2 touchdowns. That was a super nice bonus at the end of the game there, as Philly was trying to get back and compete with the Lions at the end of the game. But that one, the process worked out. I just wish that it was a different stat line, or because I would feel a little bit better about it too. And I wish that it wasn't all like at the end of the game, But this one was pretty good on the results. That I think the process on it hit. It just, was just a really weird game. Next one here, Larry Fitzgerald, 47.8% owned. I believe he was $5,100. I actually pivoted off of John Ross towards Larry Fitz because of the fact that, they're going to play the Panthers, and Kyler Murray had, at that point, coming into week 3, had been the number one quarterback in terms of pass attempts. So I knew that there was going to be opportunity there for Larry Fitzgerald. So he finished up with 5 receptions, 36 yards, and a touchdown. Got that touchdown super early, I believe on the first drive of the game. So I was feeling really good about that one. It's just the rest of the game kind of didn't really go in his favor, even though it should have. They were losing the majority of the game with Kyle Allen, balling out. And so he had 7 targets his first game under double-digit targets, and that's kind of where we were at with Larry Fitz. Although that's kind of all I really needed him to. Basically almost a 3-time ROI, given the fact that he was only $5,100. I would have only needed about 15 points from him anyway. So he got me right where I needed him to be. Again, I just wish that my wide receivers, I need to find better ways to get wide receivers that are going to get me that production without scoring the touchdown there. Even though the touchdown is super nice, I don't want to have to rely on that every single week, because without that touchdown, he would have had, sub 8 points, basically like 7 or 8 points without the touchdown. And that's not what I'm looking for from Larry Fitz, and that's why I don't consider him an exact hit, even though the results were there. But I'll take it either way. Last wide receiver here is Emmanuel Sanders, played in 17.4% of the lineups in this double up. Only finished with 2 receptions for 10 yards, which was a really weird game. Not what I was expecting at all from Emmanuel Sanders, a guy who had come into this game with 20 targets over the first 2 weeks, a double-digit target game in week 2, and I thought that he was going to be more of the focal point of the offense for Joe Flacco against the Green Bay Packers, and I knew that the Packers were going to come out and they were going to be in the lead for the majority of the game, and that Denver was going to have to throw, and I thought Sanders was going to be a bigger part of the offense than that. Sutton had more targets, way more targets than Emmanuel Sanders, and the production just wasn't there for him. This Green Bay Packer defense seems like it's pretty legit, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on who they're playing every week and see what the weapons are, going against the Green Bay Packers defense, because it does seem like they're the ones now, instead of Aaron Rodgers, that are carrying that team, and playing against them might not be the smartest thing every single week to do. So Emmanuel Sanders, that's a miss on my part, only 3 points, but just like Chris Carson, thankfully Aguilar was there also to help balance it out as well too. So the average between those two would have been 14 fantasy points between them. So thank you, Nelson Aguilar, and miss on Emmanuel Sanders. Moving to the tight end position, Darren Waller, my boy Darren Waller, played in 21.7% of these lineups. 134 receiving yards, so got you the 100-point bonus on 7 rushing yards, or on 13 receptions, and also added 7 rushing yards as well too. 30.1 fantasy points. A stud game from Darren Waller. And I'm thinking to myself that like how grateful I am to Sunday morning Addison. Because I had originally had Mark Andrews in that lineup, and in this lineup, I had Pat Mahomes and Mark Andrews, and I got the notification from the Sleeper app, thank you Sleeper, saying that Mark Andrews was not running routes at 100% during warmups. Obviously looked like he was inhibited by his injury, and so I immediately went here and I thought I don't really want to mess with that, even though it is a really nice matchup and Andrews would probably be needed for Lamar Jackson. Not really something that I wanted to mess with. So I was looking around and seeing who I could pivot off of Andrews for. Immediately found Darren Waller for $700 cheaper, and I thought, man, I could bump up to a guy like Zach Ertz, who I was also pretty high on this week, given the fact that he was a sub $6,000 tight end, and I could move Pat Mahomes down to Dak Prescott. So I was kind of thinking, would I rather have Dak and Ertz or Mahomes and Waller? Waller also in a nice matchup where they're going to have to throw a lot. And I was debating it, sitting there thinking about it, and I thought, you know what? Pat Mahomes and Darren Waller is totally fine. I'm just going to stick with it. I'm not going to mess with the quarterback. I'm not going to mess with anything, because I know that if I flex off of, Pat Mahomes for Dak, then Dak is going to have some weird game against Miami where he's not going to have to throw a whole lot. And then, Ertz would be fine. But again, so I just stuck with Darren Waller. So glad that I did. Had a fantastic game. Still no touchdowns yet, which is really weird, given the fact that he's had all this volume and he still has yet to find the end zone. It's going to be one of those really weird, like Dennis Pitta type games or seasons for Darren Waller, I bet, where he has 900 yards, but only 1 or 2 touchdowns on the year. But hey, we'll take it. 13 for 134. That's a fantastic output if I ever saw one. So thank you, Darren Waller. Fantastic game from you. Last but not least is the Seahawks defense. Played in 13% of the lineups here. 2 points because of one defensive fumble recovery. They allowed 33 points to the New Orleans Saints, the Teddy Bridgewater-led New Orleans Saints. So not really something that I was expecting again. Going back to what I said about Chris Carson, I thought this game, when I saw what Teddy Bridgewater did last week whenever he came in for Drew Brees, I knew he wasn't going to be that bad because Sean Payton would have a whole week to work with him and a whole week to game plan and get Teddy Bridgewater ready for this matchup. But I did like the fact that Seattle was at home. New Orleans had to travel up. I believe Seattle was even slightly favored. And so I just thought, it was going to be a pretty good game for Seattle defensively. And that really wasn't the case here. 27 points allowed. And only, like I said, one defensive fumble recovery. No sacks, no interceptions, none of that. So it's just not what I was really expecting here. So the 2 points, it kind of hurt. But, again, thank you to guys like Darren Waller, Dalvin Cook, Pat Mahomes, and Nelson Aguilar for carrying the workload, carrying the team, and getting me above the 150-point threshold. And we ended up cashing here and nail-biter because one of these guys down here, I believe it was this guy, plotting, had Keenan Allen. Yeah, he had Keenan, and I was watching the game, and it was like the last drive when the Chargers were going down. They were trying to score, and I'm like, please just throw to Eckler, not Keenan Allen. Keenan had one catch, and I got worried about it, and then ended up not losing the turnover on downs, I believe was what it was. So got lucky there. I think I was pretty lucky this week, but ended up cashing, so I'll take the results. Working on the process still this week, and just keep refining, keep grinding, keep working on it and everything. So it's only going to get better as we get more and more data as the season goes on. We find out what these teams are, what these defenses are, and it's only going to get a little bit more predictive every single week as the more and more data comes in here. So it'll be more fun as we get into the second half of the season here. This is week 4 already, so we're almost 25% of the way through the season. But as we get to the halfway point and beyond, it's going to get really fun to do this every single week still. Maybe add a little bit more moolah into it as well too. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well too. Turn those notifications on so you always get notified whenever this video drops. Leave in the comments down below, leave your team. How did your team do? What did you hit? What did you miss? I love to see those and check those out and see where you guys got lucky on, or you were really smart and you knew to play this guy. Like, who played Keenan Allen, who played Mike Evans this week. Guys that I was interested in, but ended up didn't work out for me, but it worked out for everybody else out there. So let me know in the comments down below there, and we will catch you guys next week with another recap video. All right, deuces.